No!
The GBS has sent me a package with some parts in it, and I'm going to document the condition of the box as I've received it, which is less than stellar. That's not GBS's fault. This popped out. I have absolutely no idea what else might have fallen out, and the invoice is just components.
Well, greetings world and greetings 7 Spot. We got a special treat for you. We've got Sean Wally with us, and he is building a 7. Actually, he's building 2. I've forgotten that he number 1, look at that. He's got a GBS Zero right there, but hidden away, he's got another one that he's working on, a Haynes Roadster. Now, I've told you that this is our virtual and socially distant 7s for today, but it's also deep in the shed. And what I wanted to contact Sean about is, building a car, not everybody's cup of tea. And I think it takes a little bit of a special person. And I want to have Sean kind of take a moment, if you don't mind, to wander around the car. Tell us when you started it, where you've gotten this thus far, some of the highs and some of the lows. Now, I'm going to take myself out of the picture and put you in, because as I've always said, this ain't about you. This is about you and the journey. So without further ado, here's Sean Wally.
Hi. Well, so I guess I'm going to talk a little bit about the 7, specifically my GBS Zero. I guess the place to start is Mazda Raceway a couple of years ago at the Mazda the Miata reunion, where I first became aware of GBS. Much like my friend Will, who's also been featured on this, we found out about GBS there. The following year, we went to England and we toured their workshops, and both of us decided at that time, after having visited their workshops, to actually go ahead and just order and build GBS Zeros. Both of us have been kind of curious and interested in 7s for a long time, me for various reasons and Will for others. Sorry, I'm going to be walking around a little bit. So Will picked up one that was essentially ready to go. I ended up ordering one that was a little bit more bespoke to me. I got my 7 kit, my GBS Zero kit, at the end of July this year, and I've started assembling it. So mine is spec'd completely as a Ford kit. So it has a Ford rear end, Ford Sierra rear end, Ford Sierra differentials, control arms, everything. It does have Miata, Mazda front end, brakes and whatnot, but everything else is all Ford Sierra, which is a little bit odd, and not very many cars in the US are spec'd with Ford running gear. It's almost always Mazda running gear, just because of how easy it is to get. Yeah. So that's been one interesting things. Is kind of a frustration, is finding parts here in the States that will actually bolt on it and work with this particular car. So that's been one of the things that I'm working on. One of the other interesting things is that, of course, I'm in the United States, they're in England, so there's a significant time lag between communication. So when I had issues like, oh, sorry, some guys with a couple of Harleys are taking off real quick here. They're kind of loud. So, in terms of things that have been kind of frustrating, the kit arrived and it was missing a few parts, and this is not a knock against GBS. It's just that this is a very complex system of components that go together. And so things can get missed within the packing order and things like that. So, again, not really big components, just, small little bits. So, communicating with GBS has been kind of a hit and miss thing, again, mostly just because of time zones. I think the most significant heartache I've had in building this car so far, let me see if I can walk you guys around to that, has actually been over here on the driver's side, or the passenger side. It kind of looks weird, but that upper control arm I just received this week. The original was turned out to be incorrect. For some reason, they had,
from a previous video.
Yeah, exactly. They had packaged a left upper control arm as a right upper control arm. And nobody knew how that happened. It was just kind of a manufacturing defect, not of the chassis itself. The chassis is perfectly fine. It was just, at some point in the stage of manufacture, one bracket got misplaced and welded onto an arm, and that kind of messed up the supply chain. So, you've got those small issues with small manufacturers, and, whether it's GBS or it's MK Indy or it's whomever else you're buying from, Caterham, Stryker, you're going to run into those small issues. And so there are things to consider and to take into account. But yeah, so I've had this since July. I've gotten to the point now where I've got the brakes in. I just recently set up proportioning valves, ran all the brake lines. I'm now doing the low pressure fuel system. High pressure fuel system will be next week, and then after that, I will probably be working on adapting the engine for the car. So yeah,
Wonderful.
it's pretty good stuff.
Can I ask you a question about documentation? With regard
Sure.
to your build documentation, are you working from a pretty comprehensive build manual?
I wish that I was.
Yeah.
So this is probably my biggest complaint, disappointment would be maybe a better way to put it, is that there's really not a lot of documentation that comes with this kit for what you're getting, in terms of, a complete package. This car came to me completely paneled, painted, fuel lines almost in, brake lines in, ready to bolt together. The biggest disappointment is that the build documentation is actually rather homegrown, and it's really crowdsourced. So, GBS provides a small bit of documentation for specific small components, but not an overall build guide.
Yeah, I guess I'm throwing that out there because I think in my own experience, 15 years ago, my build manual was 3 pages deep.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably fairly common amongst builders, more particularly amongst the smaller builders, is that you should be expected to do a bit of homework yourself.
Oh, definitely. And this is not my first kit car. As mentioned before, I'm building a Haynes chassis right now, which is like you buy a book on Amazon and then you start cutting tubes and welding them together.
Yeah.
Before that, I had built an Exoset, which was you buy a chassis, they drop it off, and you're supposed to strip down a Miata and throw it together yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've had some kit car experience before this, but if this were my first experience or dipping my toe into a kit car, I might be a little bit lost in what I was doing. But as it is, I have some experience. I can roll with it. It's like, oh, look, I'm putting the suspension together. The control arms are wrong. I need to talk to the factory to get a new control arm sent to me. In the meantime, what else can I do?
That's right.
As opposed to, oh, look, my suspension's done. My entire build is stopped for months. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice if there were a standard build guide that they could provide. But, and again, that's just for like the novice who says, I really like this concept of a Lotus 7 and I want to build something new and cool. And if I were to build it by their spec, this is what I would get. I think that would be good. But again, I'm a little bit beyond that, so it doesn't bother me as much. But if I were a brand new person interested in building a car like this, that might be put off.
Well, I know in my own case, Sean, I don't mind throwing this out there. I don't have the building background that perhaps you do. And when I built mine, I only built it because I had 2 kids who wanted to go to trade school. So I figured, let's build a car. So we built, got the kit and started. What I found, there's 2 sources that were wonderful for me. And I'll throw this out there because they helped me a lot. Was the Low Cost Builders USA and
Very good.
the Low Cost Builders UK. Unbelievable resources.
So it's good that you mentioned those 2 resources, because for my Haynes build, which I started last October, and actually, like I said, I got about 3/4 of the way through the actual chassis, even to the point where I've ordered body panels for it. I'm trying to figure out a good camera angle. It's not good. So I'm actually a fair bit of the way into that, and I figure it's maybe another 12 months before I'm complete with that. Once I finally finish the Zero build. But those were really, really good resources. Like, I had no idea what I was going to do for a sump on the low cost. And I went on to Low Cost Builders UK, and I found somebody whom had designed and built a sump for a Duratec engine.
Yeah.
They weren't building them anymore for other people, but I talked to them for a little bit and paid them, I think it was 15 quid, 15 pounds UK. And they sent me plans to build my own. So I've got those plans so that, at some point when I'm ready to, I can cut up the steel to do that, tack it together, get it all welded up, and I'll have a sump for that car.
That's wonderful.
It is. And so, I think that's one of the things that I really liked about, first, the Exocet community, is that there are just so many people who are like, well, there's not a lot of information on these cars, so we have to do it ourselves, so we might as well share the information. And then moving over toward the low-cost builder community, it's very much the same sort of thing. It's like everybody's pulling for you to build a really cool thing and to do something new that nobody else has done. That they're really interested when you do that. And then into the pre-built kit system, people are interested in, one, the kits themselves, but also the little modifications that you do on top of it, right? It's like in the kit that I'm building, the GBS Zero kit, standard, the brakes don't have a proportioning valve, so I'm installing that on my own. There are just a small tweaks that you do on the build, which makes every car bespoke to an individual, which is pretty cool. And that's also another thing that I really like about sevens, is that there is no identical seven in the world.
That's fun.
And that is so cool.
Yeah. Well, why don't you take us for a quick walk around? I'd love to see what you've got so far. Is that all right?
Okay.
Too?
Yeah. That's absolutely fine. So in terms of this guy, so let me see if can I turn my camera around?
Yeah, you can go down to the camera setting, and then there's two camera settings. One is forward, and the other one is reverse.
Oh, okay. So is that forward now?
It's a good picture of a black background. And if all else fails, you can always rotate the camera.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. All right. So this is my GBS Zero, of course, and
that's a beauty. I love the color.
Camera. It's great, actually. I was kind of going back and forth of whether I wanted it to be all green. I have it. Green is my favorite color, so I kind of tend to go with green for a lot of stuff.
Yep.
But I ended up deciding I would go with a gray, and GBS happened to have this particular Lamborghini-based gray still in stock from another car, and so they sprayed my car with that, and then the green stripes over the hood are this very bright, vibrant, luminous green.
Yeah, it's really cool.
In sunlight, it's almost blinding, and I absolutely love it. And I almost wish I'd gone the reverse, but at the same time, I'm glad I didn't, because I have to look at this thing every so often, and I just don't want to burn out my eyes. So, so that's good. Down here, the GBS build these themselves. These are their ATR brand shocks. They're fantastically good.
I know, and they adjust from the bottom, which is really interesting.
They really do. And so that's actually kind of an interesting thing. So the adjusters down here, you can flip them over. The problem is that the adjuster interferes with the headlight bracket up here if you do that.
Yeah.
So you really want to have the adjuster on the bottom, and particularly in the rear. Let me go over here and show you that. Again, over here, if you had the adjuster at the top, you're never going to get to it.
Never going to get in there. No.
Yeah.
So
this is the way to. Yeah. So this is the way to go here.
And so it's got a Sierra diff, and you've got the Ford engine as well.
Yeah. So this is the differential right here. This is a Ford Sierra limited slip, 3.62 to 1. It's been reconditioned by GBS themselves, and they included that in my kit. And like I said, this is. My car's a little bit of an oddity in the U.S. in that I'm going with all Ford Sierra running gear. And the reason I did that was when myself and Will went to England and we visited the GBS workshops, one of their engineers, Anthony, gave us a ride in their demonstrator. And I couldn't stop laughing the entire time. It made me giggle so much. And so when I talked to them about building my car, I told them directly, I want that car. And so my GBS is actually spec'd very, very close to their factory demonstrator.
I would
So,
think
of
that it's got
course,
a big chunky rear end like that is going to stand you very well, because I know that there are some people who've had some diff problems, not necessarily GBS, but
yeah.
under-manufactured rear ends. I know that in mine, I have a Ford Thunderbird differential, and it is chunky. I'll never wear it out. I mean, I'll die
Yeah.
before it gets.
So, and again, I come from a Miata background. I have a Miata track car. I have an NB Miata as a kind of weekend driver. And I've turboed Miatas, and my Exocet was all Miata based. And the weaknesses there are transmission and differential.
Yeah.
So you're going to shred your transmission before you shred the differential, but the differential is not that far afterward. The Ford differential is a much beefier unit than
Yeah, it sure
the
is.
Mazda unit.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of lumps over here, I've got some parts. So that's that right there is actually the differential that's going into the Haynes Roadster. That's a
Okay.
Miata differential. You'll notice it's kind of hacked down and cut apart.
I was wondering how you're going to do that. Are you going to re-weld some reinforcement on the top on there, or how's that going to work?
So that one's actually going to work a little bit differently. I'm kind of pulling a play from GBS's design for the Mazda chassis, which they also cut off the extended arms, and they bolt the Miata chassis, the Miata differential straight into the chassis.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, it's in storage, so I can't show you guys what it looks like. But
you may be back.
Yeah, I will be back, and I'll probably show that a little bit.
You bet.
But over here, there's one engine and two engines. Both of these are Ford Duratex. This guy down here is a 2-liter.
Yep.
That's going into the Haynes Roadster.
Yes.
And this right here is the 2.5-liter, and that's going to go into the GBS.
Awesome.
And that matches the spec for the GBS demonstrator. And I chose the 2.5 just because I wanted, for a road car, I wanted the better torque down low. It doesn't need to rev out to 1,000,000 RPM. So, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, totally awesome. Now, I think you've actually covered a whole bunch of my questions. I'm reading from my program notes, and I was going to ask you, well, I was going to say why a 7, but currently you filled us in on that because you've always been intrigued by it. And why a 0?
So I've explained the why is 0, but why is 7 is actually a more interesting question. Okay. I'm actually glad that you asked it. So ever since I was, I want to say 10 years old, I've been interested in Lotus 7s. I'm 45 now, so you're talking like 35 years of really liking these things. And you have to really like them to want to build one from the ground up with like the Haynes, and then build another one on top of it just for funsies like the GBS. It kind of comes down to my uncle. He showed me a television program from the BBC called the Prisoner. I don't even remember why I had a hard time remembering that, but I did. In which Patrick McGowan drove a Lotus in that show. And I always thought that was really cool. And then as I grew older, I really found that I like cars, and I like cars a lot, but more modern cars they're complex, they're hard to work on, they're distracting. When you're driving them, they're distracting, just, all the things that are in them. And so I kind of pivoted at one point to motorcycles. And so I'm a huge motorcycle nerd. That right there is my Triumph Speed Triple. I'm supremely biased towards English cars and motorcycles. So I don't know why, it just kind of is. But yeah, I was out on a motorcycle track day. I went off a corner, dislocated my shoulder, broke an ankle. Was kind of a bad day. I walked away, kind of limped away. Limped away is a better way to put it. But I decided then that cars were the better way to go about it. What I realized as I pivoted my motorsports career more towards cars is that I like simplicity, right? It's like if I get on my motorcycle, I like that I don't have a lot of things flashing in my face. I don't have a lot of things to worry about. And that kind of brought me back to the 7, where it's a distillation of what it is to be in a car, right? You have a steering wheel, you have wheels, you have engine, you have a transmission. You can hear everything, you can feel everything. There's nothing that's really kind of distracting you from that.
It's old school.
and it's very old school. It's very analog.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what drew me back into the sevens, and
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of why I'm here.
Well, and then the other question, my third question was why a kit? And so I mean, you've more than covered that because you're doing more than a
Mhm.
kit. You're building it from scratch, a scratch build. That's on my bucket list, by the way. So
Mhm.
I got a question about the Haynes though. Now that you're doing the Zero and it's got the
Mhm.
all of the pieces are laminate instead of
Mhm.
you know having being pop riveted. Are
Mhm.
you going to employ some of that technology on the Haynes, or are you just going to use pop rivets throughout?
Oh, wow. So that's actually a really good question. The Haynes is actually going to be completely. uh, This is what excites me about the two
Because it's all a
cars.
bespoke build, right?
It's all bespoke built.
And you can make
So,
you can make it much more rigid by doing that. All you need is a great big, a
mhm.
whole bunch of clamps and a whole bunch of Sikaflex, and you're in.
Yeah. So like, and I'm glad you actually brought that up because for me, my Haynes Roadster is will not necessarily be as good of a car as the GBS is.
Mhm.
It'll be a good car. I'm not going to deny that, but I know me. I know my skill. I know my welding skills. Things are going to break on it.
Yeah.
That's just me, right? The GBS will be a lighter car. Oddly enough,
Mhm.
all the body panels of this are aluminum.
Mhm.
Aluminum. I don't know why I went aluminum, but there
Yeah.
we go. I'm American and not English. Uh, but and so they're very very light. The Haynes I bought a body kit from MK Indy, and that's all composite. So that's fiberglass. That's a much heavier body.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one of the particular differences
So
between the two
you've got
cars.
a fiberglass. This is an MK Indy Haynes kit. I get it. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an MK Indy. Well, it's an MK Indy body that I'm going to be slapping onto a Haynes
I
chassis
got it. Yeah.
that I've
I understand. Yeah.
that I've modified to use MX5 running gear.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a more interesting challenge.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, that's one of the things I really like about it is it is a challenge, and it is again, like I said, it's a car that has never been quite built before. I mean, there've been similar to it, but none that will be built exactly like it, and that's
Because
kind of cool.
every builder is an imagination machine. And I know
Exactly.
in mine, I've got all kinds of unique little things that people scratch their head at and look at and say, that's different. But you
Hmm.
know what? It worked for me.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Sean, I'm going to say thank you.
Well,
You've,
thank you.
you've given us a picture of what's going on there. And I
Hmm.
got a couple of questions that are completely unrelated to the build, but I'm going to
Okay.
bring myself back in. When I was, first of all, exit solo. There we go. The two of us.
Hmm.
When I was talking to Will, you had something like 46 fires on the go in California. What is the situation like there now?
So it's actually much better. Most of the fires have been contained now, and our
Mhm.
air quality has improved quite a bit.
Oh,
So
I'm so happy to hear that.
yeah, so our air quality has gotten down to the healthy range now. The big fire near us, the Santa Cruz fire, just today they got full containment of.
Oh, that's
Um,
wonderful.
Now, unfortunately, both Will and I, we have some mutual friends. They lost their houses in the fire, and
Yeah.
that's very
Mhm.
unfortunate. But yeah, things are working out for themselves, and everybody that we know got out safely, which is good. And their insurance are taking care of them and making them whole, so that's good.
Well, once again, Will, sorry, excuse me, Sean, I'm going to say thank you so much for sharing your time and sharing your car and sharing your build story with us at Seven Spot, because I want more than anything in these Deep in the Shed interviews is to give some perspective. People that have been
Mm,
talking to me and they're saying, I'm going to go build myself a car. I say, well, yeah, do a bit of research, check it out. I mean, there's all kinds of different roads that you can go down. Some are good roads and some are so wonderful.
yeah.
And do your research because it's a journey. But one
Hmm.
thing about the journey is you're going to find a lot of people who are going to help you and point you in the right direction.
Oh, definitely. I have never found a bad person whilst working on these cars.
You
So
bet. Absolutely right. Once again, Sean, I'm going to say thank you, and we will see you at 7 Spot.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers for
Bye-bye.
now.
Bye.